The stars blurred into streaks of light as Captain Elias Drake's ship hurtled through the atmosphere of an uncharted planet. Alarms blared, red warning lights flashed, and the acrid smell of burning metal filled the cockpit. His knuckles turned white as he gripped the controls, trying desperately to stabilize the vessel. But it was no use. The engines sputtered, groaned, and then went silent. With a deafening crash, the ship plowed into the dense jungle below. Trees snapped like twigs, their glowing leaves scattering in all directions. For a moment, there was only silence, broken by the faint hiss of steam rising from the wreckage. Then came the pain. Elias groaned, clutching his side where jagged metal had pierced through his flight suit. He blinked hard, forcing himself to focus despite the throbbing ache radiating through his body. Pushing open the mangled door of the cockpit, Elias stumbled out into the alien wilderness. The air was thick and humid, carrying an unfamiliar sweetness that tickled his nose. Around him, the jungle glowed softly with bioluminescent plants, a surreal sea of green, blue, and purple hues. Strange chirps and rustling sounds echoed in the distance, reminding him how far he was from home. Home. Earth felt like another lifetime now. Elias scanned the area, searching for anything salvageable. His communicator was dead, its circuits fried during the crash. Without it, contacting rescue teams, or even determining his location, was impossible. Frustration bubbled inside him, but he pushed it down. Survival came first. Picking up a shard of metal from the wreckage, he fashioned a makeshift blade and strapped it to his belt. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. As he moved cautiously through the underbrush, something caught his eye, a flash of silver among the foliage. Curious, he approached carefully, heart pounding. What he found stopped him in his tracks. Lying motionless on the mossy ground was a figure unlike anything he'd ever seen. Her skin shimmered faintly, reflecting the ambient glow of the forest. Long, silvery hair cascaded over her shoulders, and delicate patterns pulsed rhythmically across her arms, almost like veins made of light. She wore garments woven from what looked like liquid crystal, torn and singed at the edges. Elias hesitated, unsure if she was alive, or even human. Kneeling beside her, he noticed shallow breaths lifting her chest. Relief washed over him. Whoever, or whatever, she was, she needed help. Carefully, he scooped her up, surprised by how light she felt, as though gravity barely touched her. As he carried her back toward the wreckage, he couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter would change everything. When they reached his makeshift camp, Elias laid her gently on a patch of soft moss. That's when it happened. A sudden warmth spread through his mind, not painful but overwhelming. Images flooded his thoughts, flashes of towering crystalline cities, shadowy figures chasing her through corridors, and finally, fear, pure, raw fear. And then, just as quickly as it began, the sensation faded, leaving Elias shaken but certain of one thing. This mysterious woman wasn't just any survivor. She was running from something, or someone. And whatever it was, it might already be hunting them both. Little did Elias know, saving her life would set off a chain of events that would take him farther from Earth than he could ever imagine, and closer to understanding the true meaning of courage. The alien woman stirred, her glowing skin flickering faintly like a dying ember. Elias sat nearby, his back against the trunk of a luminescent tree, watching her warily. His makeshift camp was quiet except for the occasional rustle of leaves and distant chirps of unseen creatures. He tightened his grip on the shard of metal he had fashioned into a blade, unsure if she would wake up peaceful or hostile. Her eyes fluttered open, revealing irises that shimmered like molten gold. For a moment, she simply stared at him, her expression unreadable. Then, without warning, Elias felt something brush against his mind. Not words, but emotions. Waves of gratitude washed over him, followed by flashes of fear and urgency. It was as though she was speaking directly into his thoughts, bypassing language entirely. Elias blinked in shock, instinctively pulling away. What are you doing?" he stammered, even though he knew she couldn't understand spoken words any more than he could speak hers. She tilted her head, studying him with an intensity that made him uneasy. Slowly, images began to form in his mind again. Scenes of destruction, shadowy figures chasing her through crystalline halls, and finally, her desperate escape into the jungle. Through these fragmented visions, Elias pieced together part of her story. She was being hunted. By whom? Why? Those answers remained unclear, but one thing was certain: she needed his help. Despite the strangeness of their connection, Elias found himself unable to turn away. There was something about her vulnerability, a kind of quiet strength that resonated with him. He nodded slowly, signaling that he understood. Her lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile, and the tension in her body seemed to ease slightly. Over the next few hours, they communicated through gestures and shared mental images. Elias learned her name, Lyria. She wasn't just another refugee or wanderer. She was royalty. The visions she sent included towering spires of crystal, grand ceremonies, and crowds bowing before her. But there were darker images too. Her uncle, a man with cold, calculating eyes, plotting against her family. He wanted the throne, and Lyria stood in his way. As night fell, the jungle grew eerier. Strange sounds echoed around them, and shadows moved unnaturally among the trees. Lyria pointed toward the horizon, where faint lights suggested civilization. They had to keep moving, she conveyed silently, showing him images of danger closing in behind them. Elias hesitated. Traveling deeper into this alien world was risky, especially since he had no idea what awaited them. But staying put felt equally dangerous. Together, they gathered supplies from the wreckage, what little remained, and set off into the unknown. The journey was slow and exhausting. Lyria moved gracefully despite her injuries, while Elias struggled to match her pace, hindered by his own wounds. Still, they pressed on, driven by necessity and a growing sense of trust between them. At one point, Elias paused to examine a peculiar plant whose leaves glowed brighter when touched. Lyria stepped closer, placing a hand gently on his arm to guide him away. When their skin made contact, a jolt of energy passed between them, a brief but intense connection that left Elias breathless. In that fleeting moment, he caught glimpses of her world as it truly was, breathtakingly beautiful yet fraught with peril. He saw her people, the Xyrethians, living in harmony with their environment, their culture rich with art, science, and tradition. And he saw her, not just as a princess burdened by duty, but as someone who longed for freedom and peace. When they finally stopped to rest under the canopy of glowing trees, Elias realized how much he'd come to rely on their unspoken bond. Though they came from different worlds, they shared a common goal: survival. And perhaps, Elias thought as he gazed at Lyria's luminous form, something even greater, a chance to bridge two vastly different species and forge a connection neither could have imagined. For now, though, they were fugitives, pursued by forces neither fully understood. As sleep claimed him, Elias couldn't shake the feeling that their journey was only beginning, and that Lyria held secrets far greater than he could comprehend. Elias stumbled into the outskirts of the Xyrethian capital, battered and bloodied but alive. The journey had been grueling, every step a battle against exhaustion, pain, and doubt. Yet, through it all, one thing kept him going: Lyria's faint presence in his mind. It was like a thread pulling him forward, guiding him toward her even when he couldn't see the path ahead. Now, standing on the ridge overlooking the crystalline city, he felt a surge of determination mixed with awe. The spires shimmered under the twin suns, casting prismatic reflections across the sky. It was beautiful, but dangerous. He could sense the tension in the air, the weight of an impending storm. As he approached the gates, guards intercepted him, their weapons trained on him with wary precision. They didn't recognize him as an ally, only as an outsider, a human intruder in their sacred city. Elias raised his hand slowly, showing he meant no harm. "I'm here for Princess Lyria," he said, his voice hoarse from days without rest. "She needs help." The mention of Lyria's name sparked recognition among the guards. One of them stepped forward, lowering his weapon slightly. "You're the human who saved her?" he asked, his tone softer but still cautious. "Yes," Elias replied firmly. "Where is she?" After a brief exchange, the guards led him to a hidden chamber within the city walls. There, Lyria stood alongside a group of advisors, poring over maps and schematics. When she saw Elias, her golden eyes widened in disbelief. For a moment, neither of them moved. They simply stared at each other, relief and gratitude washing over them both. Then, without hesitation, Lyria rushed to him, throwing her arms around him in a tight embrace. "You're alive," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. Through their bond, Elias felt the depth of her fear and joy. He nodded, wincing slightly as pain shot through his side. "I told you I'd find you," he said with a weak smile. But there was no time for reunions. Lyria quickly explained the situation: her uncle's coup, the shadow drums, and her plan to expose him during the ceremonial gathering that night. Elias listened intently, his mind racing with possibilities. "I'm coming with you," he said firmly when she finished. "No," Lyria protested, shaking her head. "It's too dangerous. You've done enough. And let you face this alone." Elias countered, his voice unwavering. "Not happening." Reluctantly, Lyria agreed, knowing there was no arguing with him once he'd made up his mind. Together, they finalized the plan. Disguised as servants, they would infiltrate the palace during the ceremony. Inside, Lyria would confront her uncle publicly while Elias provided backup, ready to act if anything went wrong. When night fell, the palace was alive with activity. Nobles and dignitaries filled the grand hall, their crystalline attire glittering under chandeliers that pulsed with light. Valen stood at the center, gloating about his rise to power. His cold, calculating gaze swept over the crowd, savoring the fear he inspired. Lyria and Elias slipped inside unnoticed, blending seamlessly with the staff. As the ceremony reached its climax, Lyria stepped forward, removing her disguise. Gasps rippled through the room as everyone recognized her immediately. "I am not dead," she declared, her voice resonating clearly in every mind. "And I will not stand by while my uncle destroys everything our people hold dear." Valen's expression twisted with rage. Before he could respond, the shadow drums descended, attacking indiscriminately. Chaos erupted as guests fled in terror. Elias sprang into action, using improvised weapons to disable the drones while Lyria confronted her uncle directly. Their battle was fierce, but together, they turned the tide. In the end, Valen was subdued, his lies exposed. As order was restored, Elias looked at Lyria, pride swelling in his chest. She had reclaimed her throne and proven herself worthy of leading her people. But what came next remained uncertain. The next morning, Elias and Lyria ventured deeper into the glow forest, a place that seemed alive with secrets. The air shimmered faintly, as if infused with invisible energy, and every step they took stirred glowing spores that floated lazily upward like fireflies. Despite its beauty, the forest was not welcoming. Strange noises echoed around them. Low growls, high-pitched screeches, and the occasional sound of something large crashing through the underbrush. Elias tightened his grip on his makeshift blade, his senses on high alert. Lyria moved gracefully beside him, her movements almost weightless. She paused occasionally to examine the flora, touching certain plants or murmuring softly to herself, or perhaps to the forest itself. Elias couldn't tell, but he noticed how some of the glowing vines recoiled at her touch, while others seemed to brighten in response, as though acknowledging her presence. It was clear she knew this world better than he ever could, yet she still relied on him for protection. He found that thought oddly comforting. Their progress was slow but steady until they reached a clearing dominated by an enormous tree, whose trunk glittered like polished gemstones. Its branches stretched impossibly high, each leaf pulsing with rhythmic light. In the center of the clearing lay what appeared to be ruins, stone structures half buried in moss and roots, covered in intricate carvings that glowed faintly. Lyria approached cautiously, her expression one of reverence mixed with sadness. She placed a hand on one of the stones, and Elias felt another wave of images flood his mind. This time, they were memories of a long-lost civilization, a people who had once thrived here before vanishing without explanation. Before Elias could process what he'd seen, a low rumble shook the ground beneath their feet. From the shadows emerged a creature unlike anything he'd ever encountered. It resembled a massive serpent, its scales iridescent and shifting colors with every movement. Its eyes glowed red, and when it opened its mouth, rows of razor-sharp teeth gleamed menacingly. Elias froze, unsure whether to fight or flee. Lyria acted quickly, stepping forward with her hands raised. Her voice entered his mind again, calm but urgent. "Stay back," she communicated. "Let me handle this." Elias hesitated, torn between trusting her and protecting her. But before he could intervene, Lyria began to hum, a soft, melodic tune that resonated through the clearing. To his astonishment, the serpent paused, its glowing eyes narrowing as though listening. Slowly, it lowered its head, its body relaxing. After a moment, it slithered away, disappearing into the jungle as silently as it had come. Elias exhaled sharply, realizing he'd been holding his breath. What was that?" he asked aloud, even though he knew she wouldn't answer verbally. Lyria turned to him, her golden eyes filled with both gratitude and determination. Through their connection, she showed him fragments of understanding. Music held power here, a language older than words. The serpent hadn't been evil. It had simply been guarding the ruins, reacting to their intrusion. As they continued onward, the challenges only grew more intense. They crossed treacherous ravines using vines that swayed precariously over chasms filled with jagged rocks. At one point, Elias nearly slipped, saved only by Lyria's quick reflexes as she grabbed his arm and pulled him to safety. Later, they encountered venomous insects the size of birds, their stingers dripping with poison. Using her knowledge of the forest, Lyria guided them away from danger, pointing out safe paths and warning Elias of hazards before they became threats. Through it all, their bond deepened. Elias marveled at Lyria's resilience and wisdom, while she admired his courage and resourcefulness. They complemented each other perfectly, each learning from the other's strengths. Yet, as they pressed on, Elias couldn't shake the feeling that Lyria was hiding something. Why hadn't she contacted her people for help? What exactly was she running from? And why did it seem like the forest itself was watching them? By the time night fell again, they had reached the secluded grove surrounded by towering trees. Exhausted, they settled down to rest. As Elias drifted off to sleep, Lyria stared up at the glowing canopy, her thoughts distant. She knew the hardest part of their journey was yet to come, and that the choices ahead would test them both in ways neither could anticipate. The aftermath of the battle left the grand hall in disarray. Broken shards of crystal littered the floor, reflecting faint glimmers of light from the damaged chandeliers above. The once majestic chamber now bore the scars of chaos, but amidst the wreckage stood Lyria, her shimmering form glowing brighter than ever, as if her resolve had reignited the very essence of her being. Her uncle, Lord Valen, lay restrained at her feet, his cold eyes filled with fury and defeat. Around them, the surviving nobles and guards watched in stunned silence, their loyalty shifting back to the rightful heir. Lyria took a deep breath, steadying herself before addressing the crowd. "My people," she began, her voice resonating clearly in everyone's minds, calm yet commanding. "What you have witnessed tonight is proof of my uncle's greed and deceit. He sought to divide us, to rule through fear rather than unity. But Zerathia will not fall to such darkness." Her words sparked murmurs of agreement among the crowd. Slowly, one by one, they knelt before her, pledging their allegiance. It was a moment of triumph, but also immense responsibility. As the weight of leadership settled on her shoulders, Lyria glanced toward Elias, who stood quietly near the edge of the room. His face was streaked with dirt, his body bruised and battered, yet his expression remained resolute. She owed him everything. Later that evening, after the palace had been secured and Valen imprisoned, Lyria invited Elias to a private audience in her chambers. The room was serene, adorned with soft, glowing crystals that cast a gentle light over intricate carvings depicting Xyrethian history. Lyria sat on a low bench, her posture regal but weary. For a long moment, she simply looked at Elias, studying the man who had risked so much for her, and asked for nothing in return. "Elias Drake," she said finally, breaking the silence. "You saved me, not just today, but countless times since we met. I cannot repay your bravery, but I want to offer you anything within my power. Wealth, technology, citizenship among my people. It is yours if you desire it." Elias shook his head, smiling faintly despite his exhaustion. "I didn't do this for rewards," he replied simply. "I followed my conscience, that's all." His humility struck Lyria deeply. She rose from her seat, stepping closer to him until they were face to face. "Then let me give you something far greater," she said softly. Reaching into the folds of her crystalline robes, she retrieved a small object, a glowing shard no larger than her palm. It pulsed faintly, its light-shifting colors like the auroras of Earth's polar skies. "This is a fragment of my essence," she explained, placing it gently in his hand. "It will allow us to remain connected, no matter how far apart we are. Wherever life takes you, I will always be with you, in spirit, if not in person." Elias stared at the shard, overwhelmed by its beauty and significance. "Why?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why would you trust me with something so precious?" "Because you trusted me when I had nothing to offer in return," Lyria answered, her golden eyes shining with emotion, "and because I believe our bond transcends worlds. You've shown me that courage knows no boundaries, not even those of species or distance." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Elias closed his fingers around the shard, feeling its warmth seep into his skin. "Thank you," he said sincerely. "I'll treasure it always." As dawn broke over the city, Elias prepared to leave. Though Lyria offered him a place among her people, he knew his journey wasn't finished. Earth still needed him. And someday, perhaps, humanity could forge a lasting alliance with the Xyrethians. With a final embrace, he stepped onto a sleek transport vessel provided by the royal guard, carrying with him not just memories, but a piece of Lyria herself. As the ship ascended into the sky, Lyria watched from the palace balcony, her heart heavy yet hopeful. Their paths might diverge, but their connection would endure, a testament to the courage and compassion that had brought two vastly different beings together. And as Elias gazed out at the stars, clutching the glowing shard, he couldn't help but smile. Whatever came next, he knew he wouldn't face it alone. Lyria raced through the jungle, her heart pounding as she fought to put distance between herself and the mercenaries. Every step felt heavier than the last, not just from exhaustion, but from guilt. She could still see Elias in her mind, his determination, his sacrifice. He had risked everything to give her a chance to escape, and now she was alone, burdened by the weight of responsibility that came with being the princess of Xyrethiya. The glowing trees seemed to blur around her as tears streamed down her face. She hated feeling powerless, yet here she was, running again instead of standing her ground. But she knew she couldn't afford to falter. If she fell into her uncle's hands, it wouldn't just mean the end for her. It would spell disaster for her people. Her father's reign had been one of unity and progress, but her uncle, Lord Valen, sought only control and chaos. He cared nothing for tradition or harmony. His ambition was boundless, and his cruelty unmatched. After hours of relentless movement, Lyria finally emerged from the forest onto a ridge overlooking the capital city. It took her breath away every time she saw it, the crystalline spires towering majestically against the horizon, their surfaces catching the light of twin suns and scattering rainbows across the sky. This was her home, her birthright. And now it was under siege. As she approached the gates, she noticed an eerie quiet hanging over the city. Normally bustling streets were eerily empty, and the usual hum of activity was replaced by tension. Guards stationed at the entrance recognized her immediately, their expressions shifting from shock to reverence. "Princess Lyria," one of them gasped, bowing deeply. "We thought you were lost." "I'm alive," she said firmly, her voice resonating in their minds. "But we have no time to waste. My uncle has taken the palace. He must be stopped." The guards escorted her inside, where she found members of the royal council gathered in a dimly lit chamber. Their faces were grim, etched with worry and fatigue. When they saw her, relief washed over them. But it was short-lived. Lyria wasted no time, demanding updates on her uncle's movements and the state of the city. What she learned chilled her to the core. Valen had spread lies about her death, claiming she was unfit to rule. Many citizens believed him, swayed by fear and propaganda. Worse, he had armed shadow drones, dark, mechanical beasts powered by stolen Zyrethian technology, and used them to intimidate dissenters. "We need to act quickly," Lyria declared, her voice steady despite the turmoil within her. "If we don't reclaim the palace soon, my uncle will solidify his power, and our people will suffer." One of the counselors hesitated, glancing nervously at the others. "Your Highness, there is another matter. Captain Drake, the human who helped you. He's still out there. Shouldn't we send aid?" Lyria froze, her chest tightening. She wanted nothing more than to ensure Elias's safety, but doing so might cost her the element of surprise. If Valen discovered she was alive, he would fortify his defenses, making any attempt to retake the palace nearly impossible. Torn between duty and emotion, she clenched her fists. "No," she said quietly. "Elias chose to protect me, knowing the risks. I won't dishonor his bravery by abandoning this fight." Her resolve hardened as she formulated a plan. That evening, during a ceremonial gathering meant to celebrate Valen's rise to power, Lyria would infiltrate the palace disguised as a servant. With the help of loyal guards and trusted allies, she intended to expose her uncle's treachery before the entire court. But as she prepared for the dangerous mission ahead, one thought lingered in her mind. Elias. She could feel his presence faintly, like a distant echo. Was he safe? Had he survived the mercenaries? For the first time in days, she allowed herself a moment of vulnerability, closing her eyes and sending a silent plea through their bond. "Hold on," she thought desperately. "I'll come back for you." Little did she know, Elias was already closer than she realized, and determined to reach her, no matter the cost. When Elias returned to Earth, he was hailed as a hero. News of his daring mission, and his role in forging ties with the Zyrethians, spread quickly, igniting hope among humanity's struggling survivors. The crystalline shard Lyria had given him became a symbol of unity, proof that cooperation between species could lead to something greater than survival. Yet, despite the accolades and attention, Elias kept the true nature of his bond with Lyria a secret. To the world, he was Captain Drake, the man who had bridged galaxies. But in private moments, when the weight of leadership grew heavy, he would hold the shard close, feeling its faint pulse, and remembering the princess who had changed him forever. Life on Earth began to transform. With Zyrethian assistance, humanity started rebuilding, not just cities, but relationships with their planet. Advanced technology shared by the aliens allowed for sustainable energy sources, healing ecosystems once thought lost. For the first time in decades, there was a sense of optimism. People looked up at the stars not with fear or longing, but with curiosity and ambition. Elias, however, struggled to settle back into his old life. He attended ceremonies, gave speeches, and worked tirelessly to strengthen the alliance between Earth and Zerathia. But deep down, he felt restless, as though part of him still belonged to the glowing forests and crystalline spires of another world. Nights were the hardest. Alone in his quarters aboard a rebuilt space station orbiting Earth, He would stare out at the endless expanse of stars, wondering how Lyria was faring as queen. Was she happy? Did she think of him? One evening, as he sat gazing at the shard, it began to glow brighter than ever before. A warm sensation spread through his mind, and suddenly, Lyria's voice filled his thoughts. "Elias," she said softly, her tone both familiar and distant. "I've missed you." His heart raced. "Lyria," he whispered aloud, clutching the shard tightly. "Is that really you?" "I'm here," she replied, her presence wrapping around him like sunlight breaking through clouds. Through their connection, she showed him glimpses of her reign. A thriving capital city, new policies fostering peace and progress, and citizens united under her vision. But beneath the surface, he sensed her loneliness. Being queen meant sacrifice, and though she wore her crown with grace, it weighed heavily on her soul. Elias hesitated, unsure what to say. Finally, he asked the question that had haunted him since his return. "Do you regret sending me away?" There was a pause, then a gentle laugh echoed in his mind. "Regret? No, but I wish circumstances hadn't forced us apart. You've left a mark on my heart, and on my people, that cannot be erased." Her words brought tears to his eyes. "I feel the same," he admitted quietly. "Every day." Before their conversation ended, Lyria extended an invitation. "Come visit me again," she urged. "The universe still holds wonders beyond imagination, and I want to share them with you." Weeks later, Elias found himself stepping onto a sleek Xyrithian vessel, ready to embark on a new adventure. As the ship ascended into the stars, leaving Earth behind, he felt a sense of purpose stronger than anything he'd known before. This wasn't just about exploring uncharted worlds. It was about continuing the bond he shared with Lyria, a bond that transcended language, culture, and even species. Upon arriving at Xyrathia, Elias was greeted with open arms. The people welcomed him as a friend, honoring him not just as a human but as someone who had earned their trust. Lyria herself stood waiting at the palace gates, her radiant smile lighting up the horizon. When their eyes met, all doubts melted away. They embraced, neither needing words to express what they felt. In the months that followed, Elias became an ambassador of sorts, traveling between Earth and Xyrathia to nurture the growing alliance. Together, he and Lyria worked toward a future where humans and Xyrithians could coexist harmoniously, learning from each other and sharing dreams of exploration. Their partnership inspired others, proving that courage and compassion could bridge even the widest divides. As Elias stood beside Lyria one evening, watching twin suns dip below the horizon, he realized this was more than a story of survival. It was a testament to connection. Two worlds, once strangers, now intertwined because of two individuals willing to take a chance on each other. And as they turned to face the glittering cosmos together, Elias knew their journey was far from over. After all, the universe always held room for those brave enough to dream and to act. The next morning brought a glimmer of hope. As Elias and Lyria trudged through the dense undergrowth, they stumbled upon signs of life. Footprints pressed into the soft moss, remnants of campfires, and faint trails carved through the glowing foliage. It wasn't long before they encountered a group of nomadic Xyrithians, their crystalline clothing shimmering in the dim light. The travelers looked wary but not hostile, eyeing Elias with curiosity and Lyria with cautious recognition. One of them stepped forward, a tall, lean man with silver markings etched into his skin. He spoke in melodic tones that resonated directly in Elias's mind, bypassing language entirely. "You are far from the capital," he said, addressing Lyria. "What brings you to these lands?" Lyria hesitated, her gaze flickering toward Elias. She hadn't revealed her true identity yet, unsure if these strangers could be trusted. Instead, she communicated telepathically, explaining that she was fleeing danger and seeking refuge. The nomad nodded sympathetically, inviting them to join their caravan temporarily. Grateful for the reprieve, Elias and Lyria accepted, following the group as they moved deeper into the forest. For a while, things seemed peaceful. The nomads shared food and stories, and Elias marveled at their way of life. They lived harmoniously with the jungle, using its resources without harming it. Lyria appeared more relaxed among her own kind, though Elias noticed she remained guarded, rarely letting her guard down completely. He couldn't blame her. Something about the situation felt off, though he couldn't pinpoint why. That night, as the group settled around a glowing fire made from bioluminescent wood, Elias overheard fragments of conversation between two nomads. Their voices were low, almost imperceptible, but his instincts kicked in when he caught glimpses of hostility in their expressions. He nudged Lyria, who immediately tensed. Through their connection, she confirmed his suspicions. One of the nomads had recognized her, not just as a fugitive, but as the princess. Before they could act, chaos erupted. A loud screech pierced the air, followed by the sound of crashing branches. Shadows emerged from the trees, mercenary drones, sleek and menacing, their metal bodies gleaming ominously. The nomads scattered, some drawing weapons while others fled in panic. Amidst the confusion, one of the nomads shouted loudly enough for everyone to hear, "The princess is here. Take her." Elias's blood ran cold. Betrayal. That single word echoed in his mind as he realized the nomads had sold them out. Lyria grabbed his arm, panic flashing in her golden eyes. "We need to go, now," she urged, her voice clear in his thoughts. But escape wouldn't be easy. The mercenaries closed in rapidly, their weapons trained on Lyria. Elias reacted instinctively, stepping between her and the nearest drone. With a fierce yell, he swung his makeshift blade, striking the machine's leg and causing it to stumble. Sparks flew as the damaged drone collapsed, buying them precious seconds. "Run," Elias shouted, shoving Lyria toward the thicket. She hesitated, torn between staying to help him or escaping as he intended. But Elias gave her no choice. Using all his strength, he tackled another drone, creating a diversion. "Go," he commanded through gritted teeth. Tears welled in Lyria's eyes as she obeyed, disappearing into the shadows of the forest. Alone now, Elias braced himself for the fight of his life. The mercenaries surrounded him, their mechanical limbs whirring ominously. Pain shot through his side as one of them struck him, sending him sprawling to the ground. Blood trickled down his temple, but he refused to give up. Every blow he dealt, every second he delayed, meant Lyria had more time to get away. Just as exhaustion threatened to overwhelm him, a burst of energy surged through the clearing. One of the drones exploded in a shower of sparks, followed by another. Confused shouts came from the mercenaries as reinforcements arrived, not allies of Elias, but rogue Zyrethian warriors sent by Lyria's uncle. Caught in the crossfire, Elias seized his chance, slipping into the jungle after Lyria. Battered and bleeding, Elias pushed forward, driven by sheer willpower. He didn't know where Lyria had gone, but he could feel her presence faintly in his mind, a beacon guiding him through the darkness. Despite the betrayal and the odds stacked against them, one thing was certain: he would find her again, and together they would face whatever came next.